Welcome back to Life in Richmond with Hank Ballinger. Today we have an awesome show for you for probably three reasons. One, we have a local businessman. Two, he is a partner of mine. And three, he's my son-in-law. So really interesting interview. So what we want to do is, again, get the idea out that anybody puts their mind to it, puts the thought work into it, puts the effort into it. Anybody can make it in business. Not saying you may not go bust. You might. But the idea is, if you keep on, most people can make it in business. Just put a lot of thought into it. Try to make the right moves. That way you don't have to back up or fail and then try to redo. Business is business. So put your mind to it and put a lot of effort into it. You can make it. So again, today we're going to be talking with Stewart Harris, again, my partner, but my son-in-law. So Stewart, you are a local businessman, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Where did you grow up?
Well, it was a long way. I appreciate you having me all the way over here.
Thank you.
If you were to go upstairs and look out the window, you could about see where I grew up. It's not too far. I've been in Richmond my whole life, except for a few years where I went to college. But I grew up here in Richmond and spent 40-something years here.
Oh, wow. Long time.
Yep.
Long time. So my house being here and being able to see his, no accident, okay? So where did you go to college?
Well, I went to Western Kentucky, down in Bowling Green, and I started in 2001, graduated in 2005, and it was a really good experience. I started out in civil engineering, went into construction management, graduated, and came back to Richmond and found a job, and worked a couple different jobs before I got into real estate. But college was a good experience for me. The actual education, maybe not the most real world relevant, but it did produce a lot of experience and some lifelong friends and that kind of thing. So it was good, but not necessarily for the exact reasons you go to college.
Yeah. So what kind of jobs did you have in the job sector?
Well, I grew up farming, and that was a great experience because farming is very, very hard work, and it's fulfilling work, but it doesn't pay a ton. But it gets you used to, gives you a good base to compare everything else to. Through college, I worked a couple construction jobs. Once I graduated, another construction job doing commercial HVAC work, and then I got into the tower business at Vertical Structures here in Richmond. Learned a lot about business from that job. I had two really good bosses that taught me a lot. Each one of them had some very specific skill sets that really taught me a lot. Some about managing the people there and how they treated me, and then some about how to manage the business and that kind of thing. But it was really beneficial to work there, and all the different jobs, you learn a lot about different types of business that way.
Did you enjoy working in the job sector?
Some ways, yes. Some ways, no. I've always been the type where I like to be in control of my own time and money and effort, and when you're working for somebody else, you don't get that. Most of the jobs that I worked were very good to me. I enjoyed the bosses that I had through those jobs. When I was at Vertical Structures, they treated me really well. That's what I went to school for. I worked there almost 10 years, and they taught me a lot, and they treated me really well. A lot of security involved with that, getting your paycheck every couple weeks and knowing what you're going to make and that kind of thing. But it wasn't exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah. Now, I've worked in the job sector, blue collar work actually, and I worked for here in town. I worked for a really good company, but I was a grunt worker. I worked and it was hard manual labor. Not that that's not okay. I met a lot of really nice people in factories and various factories I've worked in. Great people, but I was going to have to do grunt work till I was 67 and a half to get full Social Security. Now, I had a 401, but still, if I'm going to have to work till 67 and a half doing grunt work, that's hard. My hat's off to those who do that. and continue till they get 65 or 67. That's tough. That's tough. So sometimes what we're trying to offer is maybe there's a way out to where you don't have to. If you like it, great. I kind of wanted to get out of the grunt work. Not that I wasn't working for a good company, but I kind of wanted out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, with when I was at Vertical, it was kind of a unique situation. When I started, I had left another job here in Richmond to go there. A little bit better benefits, a little bit more flexibility, that kind of thing. But then, a couple of years into that job, there was a seismic shift in the economy. It kind of took a downturn. And the company itself actually did everybody a favor. They kept layoffs to a minimum, but they cut us all back to 4 days a week, which was 20% reduction in everybody's pay. They did that so that they didn't have to lay a bunch of people off, and hats off to them. They really did everything they could to treat us as good as possible. But it kind of opens your eyes to say they control pretty much everything with my income. They tell me how many days a week I can work, how much I can make. If I went to them and said, hey, I want to make more money, they could just say no. If I say I want to stay in town from now on and not travel anymore, they can say no. Right. So really, it opened my eyes to see that even though they were a really good company, they treated me really well, I was at their mercy for pretty much any decision that they made.
Right. Now, not that bosses are bad people. We should never view them like that. But Stewart's right. If I'm working for somebody, they realize they can't pay me as much as they make, or I shouldn't assume that I'm going to make as much as they do if they own the company. But also, they definitely can't pay me just multiple times more than they make.
Right.
Why would they own the company and pay someone else much more than they make? So they're going to control a little bit about how much you make. They're going to control, because they pay you what they can, depending on the company, they're going to control what kind of life you have, what kind of house you can live in, car you can drive, what kind of vacations you can go on, how many. So they do control a little bit of your life. Not that that's bad, that's just the way it is. So if you like that matrix in life, fine. If you would like to change, there are options. You can get into real estate, you can make an invention, you can become a celebrity. There are options. You just have to set your mind to it and go for your goals.
I originally started the celebrity route, but
Yeah.
it didn't work out.
How'd that go?
I thought maybe real estate would be the next best option.
Well, that may have been a good choice. I don't know. We'll see how it pans out.
Not successful in everything.
Well, nobody's going to be successful in everything. So, way it goes. So, why did you switch? You're in the working sector. You have a job, and then you decided to get into real estate. Why?
A lot of things kind of hit there within the same time span with the change in my job at Vertical. And then, we went back to 5 days a week and full pay, and it was a good job, but it kind of opened my eyes. And then not long after that, found the Robert Kiyosaki bestseller, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then that was pretty early on in Melinda and my relationship, and we were getting married pretty soon and that kind of thing. So there was just a lot of things happening at the same time that kind of opened my eyes to say, I need something else to be able to control my, financial stability, not just completely dependent on a job. And if that job hadn't worked out, I could go find another job. I get that, but I wanted something that I could be in charge of, not somebody else being in charge of it for me.
Yeah. What really stuck out to you about Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Just the ability to be in control and to know what is an asset and what's a liability. Mm-hmm. Everybody talks about your house being an asset, Dave Ramsey method and Robert Kiyosaki method. And you start talking about all that and you realize, all the stuff that you've kind of been taught financially isn't exactly the way it is. Some of it's true, some of it's not, but it kind of starts changing and shaping your viewpoint on what is a good financial investment and what's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great book. I encourage anybody, if you're trying to get started building wealth, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a great motivational book, too. It'll kind of pump you up. So really good book, a lot of good lessons. What advantages do you see in real estate investing for the average person?
There's a lot, and each person can do it differently. it doesn't all have to be the same way that I did it or that you did it or anybody else. There's tons of different ways to invest in real estate, but providing extra income is good always. No matter how much you make, there's that secondary income. There are tons of tax benefits and deductions that come with it. High income earners can invest in real estate. Low income earners can make more money through real estate and still get tax deductions from it. There's an extremely high return on your investment. You put your money in a CD or a stock, you might make 2 to 3%. If you're lucky, you might make 6 to 7, maybe 8. But we're making 30 to 40% on a lot of our investments, maybe more when you factor in all the phantom income and that kind of thing. And then really, I got to thinking about it a lot more when we knew that we were going to start having kids. Generational wealth is a big, big benefit from it. Something you can pass down. It's kind of a guaranteed retirement, whether you have a lot of your retirement in a 401 or some type of mutual fund. That could change at any point. The markets crash and you lose half of what you have. With real estate, you have something you can go stand on or be right there and know what you're getting.
Yeah. 2 points as you were talking there. I'm thinking in my mind. There's 2 major points I want to bring out about what you just said. You said when a market is in a downturn, that people can lose money in 401ks, stock market, pensions. What generally happens to real estate in a downturn economy?
Well, sometimes you can find better deals that way, but the actual value of real estate never drops, or it hasn't in my lifetime.
Yeah. So I've been in it since 2004. I got in right after .com. Great time. I went through the GFC, Great Financial Crisis of 2008 and 9, the housing crash. Great time. Pandemic, really good time. So generally, downturns are good for wealthy, bad for the poor and the middle class. I'm not saying anything wrong with the poor and middle class or wealthy. I'm just saying there's different monetary levels. So, if you switch over, it's really helpful on your tax breaks and on the value of your real estate. As bad times happen, you actually go up instead of down. Not bragging or not saying it's good for the wealthy and bad for everybody else. I'm just saying that's the way the system is. So learn to play the system, really help you.
Especially income producing property.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I bought my first house in 2007, kind of at the height of what everything cost.
Right.
And then I sold it, 2014, 13-ish, 14, sometime around there. And it still went up in price after the market crashed. It still sold for more than what I bought it for. We didn't make a large profit, but even with just a personal home, still was able to make money. Income producing property is that much and more.
No, it's impressive.
Yeah.
Now you said something also about phantom income. Let's unpack that a little bit for the viewers.
So a lot of times when you look at a property to invest in it, you think, okay, let me work up how much my taxes, insurance, my maintenance is going to be, utilities, all these costs, and then you compare it to the income, and it might be zero. And you think, well, why would I put down all this money to invest in a piece of property, and I'm not going to make any money off of it? But if you're investing in that property where you have to have income that day, that's probably not a good investment. But a lot of what we did early on, we would buy property just to get our name on it. We didn't take a dime. We didn't see a cent from it for years and years. But every single month that you pay your mortgage, your principal goes down, which means you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity that month. Every time that you raise the rent from, if it was $500 for rent last month and it's $550 this month, you've just made quite a bit of phantom income. And then as the people around you improve properties and the market goes up, your property gets a bump as well without you having to do anything. And then anytime that you put extra into your property, you change out a kitchen, a bathtub, or paint the walls and put down new flooring, you've added income to your property. And that money comes out of your pocket up front or comes out of the pocket of the business. But when you go to sell or refinance down the road, you've got a lot of money sitting there that you didn't have before and that never came out of your pocket.
Yeah, it's very true. Real estate is kind of like a multi-stream income in and of itself. cash flow, your appreciation, depreciation, and equity. You really have several streams of income just by owning real estate. You don't get that from stock. You don't get that from many aspects. Even like REITs, you buy a real estate investment trust, you kind of don't get the perks that you do by owning the real estate yourself. So really nice to get your name on the piece of real estate. Now also, how many apartments do you own? How many units?
We manage a little over 500 right now, 530-ish. We used to have around 712.
712.
Yeah. And then we sold quite a few last year. We were kind of changing our business model a little bit, selling some and paying more down, a little bit more liquid. We're hoping to get back in the 600-700 range next year. But yeah, we capped out a little over 700. We'll, buy and sell, and the longer we're in the business, you're not looking at 4 units as much as you're looking at 50 to 100 units. So it fluctuates a little bit here and there.
Mm-hmm. Again, as you're building up, then you can start looking at the bigger quantities. And a positive about that is if I'm looking at 50 units, the seller, realizing his group of people that can buy 50 to 100 units is a lot smaller. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times they're willing to be a little more lenient on the price. So as you build up, you kind of get a little more leverage. So it's a good thing. Now, you and Melinda started Blast Christian Academy. Mm-hmm. When did you start it, and what were some of the hurdles and the good things about that?
We were sitting in line to pick up Caden one day. It was in April of 21, and she looked at me and said, "We need to start a school." So that summer, we worked pretty hard and got everything ready. We had 2 or 3 kids at church that wanted another option other than public school, and by the time school started, we were up to 18 kids, and we started at Union City, and then we moved to Big Hill a couple years ago. It's been a great experience, a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort. It's not all great. There was a lot of hard times, and there's still people that you got to deal with that are tough, but for the most part, we've seen God's ability to work through us, that, putting ourselves out there that we hadn't seen before. We talk about that pretty often, that as long as we let Him use us and get out of the way, He can do a lot of good stuff. So it's been a great experience.
Yeah. So when you look at Blast and all the effort, I don't care what kind of business you start, there are going to be hurdles, and a lot of them. Mm-hmm. So when you look back now, from your viewpoint now, this is your 3rd year. Mm-hmm. When you look back, you obviously can see in retrospect all those hurdles. If you had it to do over, would you do it again?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. We would, and even at the lowest points when, we've had trouble out of, students, parents, families, monetary, site, anything, it's all small in comparison to being able to provide our kids and other kids with a good place to go to school, a Christian education that they probably wouldn't have been able to get anywhere else around here. There's a couple other options other than public school, but they don't come at it from a, conservative Christian-based mindset that we do.
Yep. Now, being that you worked in the job sector, you've been in real estate, now Blast, when you look at all those, there are hurdles to every one of those aspects of life, right? Mm-hmm. When you look at all that, would you say life is just life? Everybody's going to have hurdles. All you have to do is figure out a way to get over the hurdles.
Yes, that's probably true, no matter what type of business that you're doing. As long as it's something that you have a passion for. If you're not passionate about it and you don't have much to put into it, you're probably not going to make it too far. Right. I mean, you might get lucky and be successful, but most of the time, the people that you see that are successful in business really want to do that. It's a want to thing, not as much me and you talk about it all the time. Neither one of us are extremely intelligent people. We put in some work and do what we got to do. But as far as just being, things coming easy to you, I don't think that's necessarily the way it goes. And most of the people that, we've done business with in the past, they're not, spouting off their master's degrees. They've just got into business and they've worked and tried hard. And, when something goes wrong, they try a little bit harder and push through, and it works out the next time around. They make double what they would have the first time. So most of the time it comes down to hard workers and people that are put themselves in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. As Stewart said, a lot of what we do as far as our business, now he and Melinda, my daughter, are started Blast, and they're heavily involved in that. And that's probably a different sector than what we do in the apartments. But most of the people that we deal with in the apartments, they're not PhDs.
Right.
They're not astrophysicists. They don't work at NASA. They work in apartments. I'm not saying they're not smart people, but just like Stewart said, they have a passion, and they have just pursued that passion just like you can. Anybody can. Set goals, set high goals, but attainable goals. If you say, I want to be able to beat Michael Jordan today, probably not going to happen. You say, I want to be a billionaire by lunch today, probably not going to happen. They have to be reasonable goals, but you set reasonable goals and push, and every time a hurdle comes up, you go over it, around it, under it, or through it. You will get to that goal. Have you found that if you set reasonable goals, that you generally attain those goals, and generally quicker than you thought?
Usually, and I've read a couple books about that too. When you go to set a goal, you don't just say, I want this arbitrary thing out in the future sometime. You have to get specific about it. And when you start thinking about it, most people can kind of plan out, okay, well, what's reasonable for me to attain this? What would a reasonable time be? And then you break it down and say, okay, well, if it's going to take me 2 years to do this, what do I need to start doing next month? What do I need to have done in 6 months? What do I need to have done in 1 year? And when you map that out, most of the time, like you said, if it's something you're passionate about, you're going to jump to those those small stages before you ever get to that 2-year goal. So by 20 days in, you've finished what needs to be done by the first month.
Yeah.
And like you said, usually you can do that faster than what you originally planned. Now, sometimes you can't, and you're not in control of everything. Going back to when I was working at Vertical and we started investing in the apartments, I had a goal to replace all of my income within a certain amount of time, and it didn't happen. The economy was just kind of not something that I could control, and we couldn't get rents up enough and that kind of thing. But it did happen. It didn't happen quite as quickly as I wanted to, but it's something, as long as you keep your eye on it, it doesn't go away.
Now, have you ever made mistakes in business?
Yeah, I'd say a few. Nothing that's caused bankruptcy or anything that has been debilitating, but there's plenty of times I've missed out on properties I probably should have bought, and sometimes probably should have sold when I held and things like that. So there's always ways you can look back and say, I should have, would have, could have.
Yeah. I have never talked to a businessman yet, or business lady, that has said, oh no, I have a perfect record, never made a mistake, never talked to that person. They will all tell you they make mistakes. The thing is, you have to be willing to make the mistakes, and you got to know they're coming. You cannot be perfect in business. The market there's too many moving parts. So you're going to make mistakes. Be willing to make those mistakes. Don't blame them on somebody else or something else. Don't blame them on the economy. The sun's in my eyes. There's a definite wind factor. Don't blame it on somebody else. If you own that, just like Robert Kiyosaki says, if we admit our mistakes, we can learn from them. If we don't, if we blame them on somebody else or something else, then we don't learn from them. And it will hinder you in business. So be willing to, when you make a mistake, say, that's on me, and you'll grow from it and won't make it again. And the more zeros that's on the end of that, the more it'll sting. You won't make that mistake again. Now, as Stewart said a while ago, he owns real estate, and we've bought and sold some real estate. What's some of the more interesting properties, the way you've bought and sold?
Well, the first deal we ever did, it probably not that uncommon for a lot of people, but it was what we would consider now a smaller property, 8 units, but at the time, that was as much money as I'd ever put down on anything, so that was a pretty big deal. I remember I had a motorcycle, we sold it, sold 2 or 3 other things at the house. Melinda and I, we had a little bit in savings, and we pretty much rounded up everything we could just to put down on that. And at the time, I had to get a new truck too, and it was the first time that I had ever put anything on payments, and it drove me crazy. But I was able to buy those apartments that my income each month paid for that truck, and I've still got the apartments, but I had the truck, it's been gone for a long time. So it was a really good decision, but it was one of those deals where, you know, every cent that I could scrape together, we put down, and I was pretty nervous about it. But again, still got the apartments, and it's been paying out every year since then. One of the first deals that we got into together was pretty interesting. We didn't have any money to put down on it. I don't even think we paid a dime in closing costs. We had an investor that took out a home equity line of credit. We paid their payments every month plus a pretty hefty interest rate because the interest rates at the bank were fairly low. The bank didn't want to give us the loan, so we ended up getting the seller to go on as a guarantor because he wanted to sell the property so that he could buy some other stuff. So somebody that had a lot better financial statement than us that was selling us the property was willing to vouch for us that if we ever missed payments, he would get the properties back at the same rate that what he sold them to us as. So that one was pretty interesting. I would have never thought that you could get the seller to basically carry you and go on as guarantor, and then us not have anything out of pocket.
That's not normal, okay?
No,
I'll just tell you.
it's not. But, you know, all they can do is say no. If you,
Right.
you got to ask.
You got to ask. These banks.
And we didn't go in with that plan either. We went with the conventional loan, didn't get it. We went back and asked to do something different. We didn't get it. We went back a third or fourth time, switched banks, went to them with something else. And I finally just went into the office and I said, okay, you tell me what we need for you guys to approve us. And they said, well, you need somebody a little bit better backing because we didn't have enough money in the bank to back our loan or any of that. So once they told us what they needed, we went out and found it. And then they couldn't really say no at that point because we met everything that they were asking us to do. So it took several months. It wasn't a quick process. And if they tell you no, then you know they're just missing out because you know whether the deal's going to work or not. So it's up to you to go find the loan.
Right. Now here's what I tell people when I'm teaching people how to build wealth. I say anytime somebody tells you no, you have dyslexia. Now dyslexia is when you look at a word and you actually see it backwards. So anytime you go to a bank to get a loan and you know this is what I want and you're passionate about it, when they tell you no, you see it as on. And now what you say is, it's on. I'm going to get that loan. I have literally tried to get property and taken over a year to get a property, had to take on 2 partners and pretty much just take anything that we could of value and put it on that PFS, personal financial statement. And you're putting books, because I have a little bit of a library, so I was literally saying, well, my library is worth $50,000. Well, it probably was, but when you're putting your library up as collateral, you're stretching. But we got the loan. It's crazy sometimes what you'll do, and just you ask.
Count the blade of grasses in the yard and make sure you know mark every single one.
That's right. And I've put lime on that yard too, and put it's got fescue, so it's got some value. So you just got to ask, and sometimes these banks will do those things. Now, the timing makes a lot of difference too. If it's times when banks really need to get rid of money, it's easier for you, and they will work with you a little better. So there's crazy situations where you can get loans, and sometimes banks are tight and they don't give loans. If you walked in with the best one, you may not get it. So it's really interesting, the timing and the market. So anything else?
No, right now, anybody that's wanting to invest in real estate, it's very different than when we started, but it's still always a good time. Values are going to continue to rise as far as I can tell. I don't think there's going to be a huge drop off in the value of real estate. Sometimes it's really hard to get a loan, sometimes it's not, and the prices fluctuate, but still go out, call around, find people. You'll find a deal that's worth it, and the quicker you get started, the more it snowballs. True.
I got in real estate in 2004, bought my first piece of property in April of 2004. You got in 2012. Okay, so you've been in 11 years. I've been in 19. There have been up economies and there's been down. That's the markets. All markets go up, but they never go up in a straight line. They never come down in a straight line. It's always jagged. But you've got to ride those. The good thing about real estate is if you own it and the market's bad and maybe apartments are down or housing is down, you don't have to sell.
Right.
Hang on to it and keep taking that monthly income until the markets come back. So you're not forced to do stuff the way maybe you are if you have a job, you're working for somebody else, the economy tanks and they lay you off. Well, now you have zero income in a bad economy. So all we're trying to do is tell people there are options out there, set goals, push for those goals. You can maybe control your life a little better than what you do now. Nothing wrong with jobs, factory work. I worked factory work for years, met a lot of really great people, but it's hard work. Okay, if that's what you like, you want to do that the rest of your life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it is kind of tough on the back. So that's what we're saying. Anything else you'd like to add before we close?
I think that's about it.
All right. Well, appreciate you coming on.
No problem.
And hopefully the viewers have gotten a lot of value out of that. This local business guy here in Richmond, Kentucky. So those of you who are local realize you can make it. You can get started in business or set goals and accomplish those goals. If you're not local in Richmond, Kentucky, realize your town is probably not that different from Richmond, Kentucky. Anybody can make it. You may fail a few times, but you can make it. Set those goals, and you can become Redneck Rich. See you on the next video.